So today I am bringing you a smallish but a really interesting, I hope, book haul that I got when I was in Stratford-Upon-Avon a couple of weeks ago. I was there for a couple of days actually filming the Hamnet video, which I loved making, but I've never really looked around the shops in Stratford, to be honest, and I didn't realise they have a few charity shops, but they also have some sort of specialist second-hand bookshops, so that was so tempting to go in. So I visited 2 weeks ago the Shakespeare Hospice bookshop, which you can see here in the pictures. It is 2 floors high. The staff were absolutely amazing in there. They've got loads of classic art books, vintage books in there. They've got whole sections on literary theory. It was such a great find of a bookshop. They were more than happy for me to film in there, but there's only a little bit of footage because I'm still a little bit embarrassed about filming in public. So I bought a few books from in there which I want to share with you. I also bought a few books from the charity shop that's opposite Shakespeare's birthplace. These books are more expensive than I'm used to spending on books. I am very spoilt with the charity shops that I have around me here. About 15-20 minutes from the centre of Stratford, and my charity shops here, you get 3 books for £1, so I'm very spoilt. So for me this feels extravagant, although the fiction books were still only £1 each, but for me that felt expensive. Anyway, I've got some non-fiction, I've got some fiction to share. I'm going to start with the non-fiction. So I got 4 non-fiction books in the haul. I'm really excited about these books. Now, some of them you will have seen if you watched my last video. What was my last video? It was the DIY literature degree catch up. 6 months have gone already. I can't even believe it. But I saw some books in the shop that I thought would be fantastic for my literature studies, so I have shown you these because it's part of my degree study, but I'm just going to show everything I've bought. So some of these you'll be seeing for the second time. I'm going to start with the most expensive book I bought. This was actually £10, which is unheard of for me, but it just looks so good. And I have seen this online on second-hand bookshops online, and it normally goes for about £25, so I still felt like I'd got a bargain. So this is Marie-Louise von France's book, The Interpretation of Fairy Tales. So what I like about this book is it tells you about how to interpret fairy tales, but then it gives you a example about how to go about doing that. So in part 1 you've got the theories of fairy tales, then you've got fairy tales, myths and other archetypal stories, so looking at fairy tales from that archetypal perspective. Then you've got a method of psychological interpretation, and then they have 3 sections where they just use one tale, a tale interpreted, the tale of the 3 feathers. So you've got the 3 feathers, the 3 feathers continued, and the 3 feathers completed. So what I'm hoping to get in here is a concrete example of the how-to, not just what you should be doing or could be doing, but they're actually going to walk you through it and show you how to. And for me that made this book worth the £10 that I spent on it. Then part 2 is about shadow, anima and animus in fairy tales, which I think sounds really interesting. And then you've got part 3, which is further literature for amplification, and then questions and answers. So very practical, I think, which fits in with the fact that part of my specialist interest for my literature studies is fairy tales and the interpretation of fairy tales and finding the female voice in fairy tales. So that was worth the £10 for me. And if it is noisy, I'm so sorry. I've got both my windows open and I'm back onto a busy road, but it is still so hot here in England, even though it's cooler than it was last week, thank goodness. Now I found this in the literary theory section. This is Reading Woman, Essays in Feminist Criticism. This is by Mary Jacobus. So this is a selection of essays, which I think don't just look at literature, it goes cross-discipline, I think, and it looks at the visual arts as well. There's lots of examples of the visual arts, but it's coming at things from a feminist perspective, and because it's essays, hopefully it will give me an idea of how to do that. It's more practical. That's what I'm looking for. I want somebody to show me in an essay how you go about doing that. The one essay in here that made this a definite buy, and I would have bought this book literally just for this essay, is in Feminist Readings. Essay number 2 is called The Buried Letter, based on Villette. I think that sounds fantastic. So in Feminist Readings, we've got essays called The Difference of View, The Buried Letter, Villette, and Men of Maxims and The Mill on the Floss. Then you've got Women and Theory, and the sections in that are Is There a Woman in This Text? Judith, Holofernes and the Phallic Woman. I'm not quite sure what that is. And then the third essay is Dora and the Pregnant Madonna, which sounds again fascinating. And then we've got Absences, Readings in Hysteria is another section. Taking Liberties with Words, An Unnecessary Maze of Sign Reading, and Hysterics Suffer Mainly from Reminiscences are the titles. In that section of the book, sounds really intriguing, and like I said, that Villette essay just sounds so enticing to read. So that will help towards my literary theory and criticism studies, just examples of other people's essays. This one I showed, I think, in the last video. This is Olga Kenyon's collation of women's letters. It's called Women's Voices, Their Lives and Loves Through 2,000 Years of Letters. So this spans over 2 millennia, from ancient Egypt to the present day, and it's not just famous people. It is famous or unknown, wealthy or poor, of every age and background, from Europe, America and beyond. These epistles enable the reader to look directly into and compare women's lives over the centuries. Really fascinating if you're interested in reading like women's voices, which I am. That is becoming a much stronger focus of interest. It is literally organised like somebody's life. You've got different sections of letters collated together based on life phases, which I thought was brilliant when I saw this contents page. So part 1, letters on the beginning of life, childhood, education, religious teaching and growing up. Part 2, courtship, proposals, engagements, diaries and doubts, being in love, love affairs and lesbian love. Part 3, marriage, motherhood, the ordeals of childbirth, baby rearing, running a household, the joys and problems of growing children. Part 4, divorce, adultery, work, duty, money, writers' comments on their work and travel. And then part 5 is surviving into one's 50s, illness, widowhood, old age, confronting death. And then there are brief biographies on some of the major letter writers in here. I think this just sounds fabulous and really interesting as like a kind of fly on the wall snapshot into women's lives. That one was only £2. That one was £4.50. So this one was £3. I got the Cambridge Companion to Shakespeare. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, if you've looked, but these Cambridge Companions seem to be going up and up in price. So when I saw this one, I was in Stratford-on-Avon, the home of Shakespeare, I thought I would grab it. It kind of comes at Shakespeare, writes about Shakespeare from a kind of different slant. It's kind of putting Shakespeare in context. So you've got chapters like Shakespeare's life, what did Shakespeare read, which it will be fascinating to find out. Shakespeare and the craft of language, Shakespeare's poems, the genres of Shakespeare's play. Then it talks about playhouses and theatre going in Shakespeare's time, the London scene, city and court, gender and sexuality in Shakespeare's England, outsiders in Shakespeare's England, Shakespeare and English history, Shakespeare in the theatre, 1660 to 1900, Shakespeare in the 20th century theatre, Shakespeare in the cinema, Shakespeare on the page and the stage, then Shakespeare worldwide, Shakespeare criticism, and Shakespeare criticism in the 20th century. So some really different ways in to studying Shakespeare there. Just a really interesting all-round book. So that's it for my 4 non-fiction. But between the charity shop opposite Shakespeare's birthplace and the Shakespeare Hospice shop, where I got those non-fiction books, I did get a number of fiction books as well. The first one was a no-brainer for me. This is Sir Walter Scott's Rob Roy. So I bought this because literally a couple of days before going to Stratford, I'd begun to think ahead in my DIY literature degree, and I thought, when I've got to the end of my Victorian studies, I wonder where I'll go next. And I started just pondering where I might go, and I thought I would really love to read some Jane Austen, and that led me to researching the Regency period in my trusty overview notebook. So what I did, I wrote down some key authors of the Regency period, and then I wrote down some key words, and right at the top here I've got Walter Scott, key works, Ivanhoe, Rob Roy and Waverley. And there it was, sat on the shelf the next day. And I do love these old Penguin classics. They are just so buttery, the paper. I really love them. So for £1, this is for the future shelf, as it were, for my DIY literature degree. I am going to pick up these books that at some point I think I'm going to read if I see them sitting there for £1. I also found a book that I recognised from my big book, the 2001 Books to Read Before You Die list. I am slowly collating those as and when I see them, or if I recognise the titles of the books when I see them. Again, this was £1. It's a real chunky book, this one. So Tom Wolfe, The Bonfire of the Vanities. I've recognised the title immediately. I've no idea what this book is about. I knew it was on the list. For £1, it was coming home with me. And then I found a Hilary Mantel book. Now I've just found book 1 and 2 of her Wolf Hall trilogy, and I've not read any Hilary Mantel yet. So this was a really different one to find. Every day is Mother's Day. Margaret Forster says on the front, it's hysterical, the dialogue is spot on, Muriel and her ma are cunning creations. Sounds fun, sounds really interesting. It also, again, sounds like a story that uses the female voice, which is where my DIY literature degree is leading me. I'm getting more and more fascinated with the idea of women in that time frame and the women's voice. So my reading is slanting more towards that, and I wanted books from different time frames to compare with it as well. So these next 4 are just that. They're books that I found in the Shakespeare Hospice bookshop that focus on women, especially sort of othered women or different women or rebellious women, or the idea of fallen women outside of what is the accepted norm. So I found Willa Cather's My Antonia, is it? My Antonia? All I saw on the back for this is that it is I think it might be a love story, I'm not sure, of an immigrant girl. So that will be really interesting to read. I also found Kate Chopin, The Awakening and Selected Stories. Whenever I Google lists of feminist novels or feminist classics, which I have been doing a lot lately, this book is always on there, so it was great to see this on the shelf. Excuse the noise of the buses going past. Then I found a Daniel Defoe, Roxana, The Decline and Defeat of a Woman Fatally Tempted by the Sinful Glamour of Immorality. Perfect for that subject matter of the fallen woman, so I grabbed that one. And then last of all, Samuel Richardson's Pamela in an Oxford World Classics edition, which I love, although I have to say I do love these older Penguin classics, I really do. Yeah, this one again sounds like a book where a woman is attempted to be led astray, preached up for its morality and denounced as pornography in disguise. It vividly describes a young servant's long resistance to the attempts of her predatory master to seduce her. So women and women's reputation, it's all on that same theme again. So that's another one that I thought, yeah, that's got to come home with me. And then finally, the last book I was really excited to find. I have been looking for this book and a range of books to go with it for a project that I want to do, and it's the first time I've seen this book in a charity shop. It was only £1, so I pounced on it. So when I read David Copperfield at the start of this year, the start of David Copperfield when he's still a little boy living with his mom and Peggotty in his house overlooking the church, he hides away in his attic bedroom at the window looking at the church, reading the forgotten books that his dad left in the attic, and he finds solace in that little library of books. He uses them as escape routes out of some of the awful things that are happening to him and around him, and I just loved that. I think if you're a reader, you know that feeling of escaping into a book, especially when things are getting a bit tough in real life. I certainly know that I know that feeling well. So it really touched me, that idea of David Copperfield's little secret attic library, and I thought I really want to create David Copperfield's library. I want to find all those books because all the books are listed, which is wonderful. So I have been looking for these books for a while now, to do a reading vlog of David Copperfield's library, and I found one of the key books that's spoken about. I found Don Quixote by Cervantes. Again, another chunky book, lovely edition, very soft. This is the old-fashioned Wordsworth classics books. I've never read Don Quixote. I do actually have a slight memory of in my late teens, early 20s, when I last attempted to read classics. So we're talking like 30 years ago now, and it failed miserably. All the classics I tried to read back then I just was not ready for, but I do have a faint memory of trying to read this, getting this from the library and getting about 20 pages in, but I'm not going to let that memory put me off, because to be honest, all the classics I've read so far this year and loved, and they've been 5 stars. Some of them I also have memories of getting about 20 pages into when I was about 20. So just goes to show that the classics don't change, the books don't change, but we do. We become ready for them, don't we? So I'm not letting that slight memory put me off. I'm just super excited to find one of David Copperfield's library books to start with. So Don Quixote, it was the first book I jumped on, and I squealed, and the guy at the desk behind me laughed, and he said, "It's amazing how well that book sells. We get copies in and they always sell," with a squeal. So I added my squeal to the buying of Don Quixote. So a number of fiction books, a number of classics, a number of non-fiction for my studies as well. It was a glorious couple of days in Stratford. If you haven't seen the Hamnet video, I'm going to link that into the description box. I love that video so much, where I talk you through the book and show you the settings and all the places around Stratford, and the church and the graveyard and Anne Hathaway's cottage and the rooms where the book took place. So do go and see that if you haven't seen it yet and you think you might be interested. So thanks guys, that's my little mini book haul for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.